Hi, Jarek here from Projekt Mikrocement. Nice to see you on the Festfloor channel. Today I'm going to show you how to apply HydroFest Mikrocement on bathroom walls. Step by step, let's go. In the first step, we protect the tiles in the bathroom that have already been finished, so we don't splash them with microcement. Now I'll show you what tools I use for this project. In the first stage, I protect the ceiling with painter's tape. The next step is sanding the walls with 40 grit sandpaper. I also have sandpapers prepared in 80, 120 and 240 grit. I use 80 sand the first coat of microcement, 120 grit for the second coat and 240 grit to sand the turbo sealer. I also have waterproofing tapes ready, which I'll apply in the corners, and a mixing paddle for mixing the microcement. Here we have trowels for applying the microcement, rollers with a paint tray, and a protective mask for sealing with turbo sealer. To cut the tape neatly here at the wall joint, I use a putty knife. This creates a straight, even line. I'm moving on to the next stage of work, which will be sanding the walls with 40 grit sandpaper. I remove all uneven spots and splatters. Once the sanding is finished, I thoroughly vacuum all the walls. After sanding and vacuuming the surface, we move on to applying the primer. For this step, we use FestKontakt. Mix the product thoroughly before use. While we were priming the surface, I noticed several small micro cracks appearing on the wall. So we will now use a fiberglass mesh to prevent these cracks from transferring through to the final decorative coat of microcement. The walls are now primed. We waited 2 hours for the primer to dry. If you have a very absorbent substrate, it's worth applying a second coat of primer. In our case, we're moving on to embedding waterproofing tape in the corners. We embed the tape using HydroFest Mikrocement. We don't use any additional waterproofing because this microcement is waterproof. And here we have a situation where the walls have cracked a bit, we have micro cracks, so we're going to use mesh with FestKontakt. If you don't have these cracks, if your walls are fine, you can go straight to applying HydroFest Mikrocement. Let's go. It's also a good idea to clean the side of the bucket here, because there's often some pigment left, which, especially on the final coat, is not recommended for application. The microcement is mixed, the tapes are cut to the right length, so we can start embedding them. I apply a fairly thick layer of microcement under the tape so that it has enough material. This helps the tape adhere much better along the entire corner. Then, when I press it down with the trowel, any excess microcement will be squeezed out from underneath the tape anyway, so there's no problem if there's a little more material at this stage. Once I have finished applying the compound, I carefully stick the tape on and press it firmly right in the middle. As you can clearly see here, the excess microcement begins to squeeze out from directly under the tape as I apply pressure. It's important to pay attention to the edge of the waterproofing tape. I always run the trowel over this spot on every coat, either from top to bottom or from bottom to top. I never do it this way, pressing right here at this spot, because this edge will always be visible at the joint in the following coats, and it will be hard to hide it later. So you should do it in such a careful way that you seamlessly blend in the joint to ensure a smooth finish. If you're applying microcement throughout the entire bathroom on the walls and floor, you also need to remember about the tapes at the joint between the floor and the wall. You apply them in exactly the same way as we are doing right now. Here, we have these specific tiles that were carefully prepared by the previous team. They have already installed those adhesive tapes. So we only have to focus on putting the tapes on the wall joints ourselves. The walls have been sanded, dusted and primed. We've applied the waterproofing tape onto the HydroFest microcement. Now we're moving on to installing the mesh. We're using an ultra-thin mesh which is also self-adhesive. The self-adhesive mesh makes it much easier to apply on the wall. So let's move on to installing it. It's important that any micro cracks on the wall are covered with the mesh so that there is no mesh joint directly over the crack. And I try to stick the mesh on as precisely as possible. I simply apply it since it's self-adhesive, so I gently press it with my hand and stick it on. If I happen to notice that the mesh isn't quite reaching this specific area, I will carefully peel back that entire section and then try to push it as close as I possibly can to the corner in order to do it much better. And simply just a few small movements with your hand are more than enough. And the mesh is now successfully and firmly attached to the surface of the wall. I also try to make absolutely sure that if the mesh hasn't stuck somewhere and a small bump has formed, like right here for example, I go over it very carefully so that the mesh adheres perfectly and smoothly to the surface of the wall to ensure a durable finish. We already have the mesh attached, so we move on to applying FestKontakt, which we mix before applying. When applying the FestKontakt adhesive, I always keep that specific guideline in mind. And I always try to ensure that the last movement of the trowel is done vertically, moving the tool either from the top to the bottom or from the bottom to the top. You should never do it like this, because that specific line, that piece of tape, will always show up right here. So with each additional layer I apply, I carefully level out that line practically to zero, so that it absolutely can't be seen. We've already completed the preparation stage. We've reinforced the walls with mesh and FestKontakt. Now we move on to the main star of today's episode, which is HydroFest Mikrocement. We mix it and get started. Now you'll be able to see how I apply the first coat of microcement. We're starting to sand the first coat of HydroFest Mikrocement. I'm sanding with 80 grit sandpaper. It's time for the final coat of microcement. I want this coat to be applied very aesthetically. It will be visible after sealing, so I also took a smaller trowel to make sure the movements aren't random. The client wants the effect to be very uniform with no burn marks, so I'll also try to move the trowel in different directions to avoid burning the material. One important thing is that I've protected the adjacent walls in advance. Here at the wall joints, I want to finish the corners as neatly and cleanly as possible, so that later I don't have to spend extra time sanding them down or making any additional corrections. I did the same along the ceiling, so that the upper edge stays clean and I don't have to spend extra time correcting it later. I also want to finish this quite well the first time, so I don't have to add anything later. I'll start applying the material from the top, so if any of it drips or runs down somewhere, I can collect it later and there won't be any visible streaks or unsightly finishes. As I mentioned earlier when talking about the tapes, I applied them here on purpose so I could run my finger along the wall joint, right next to the edge of the tape. This helps me shape the corner nicely and keep the line clean. Once I remove the tape, I'll have a neat sharp joint here, so I won't need to spend a lot of extra time sanding it down or making corrections later. This will also speed up the final sanding. Of course, you can do it another way as well. When you apply the first coat, just like I did, and sand everything down, you can stick the tape here and here on these two walls, leaving a millimeter of space to add microcement at the joints. That way, it will also look aesthetically pleasing. So now I'm carefully applying the second coat of HydroFest Mikrocement. I started applying the material from the top, and as you can see, a few splatters appeared where some of the material fell off the trowel. I just need to smooth them out now and they won't be visible anymore. And if I were to start applying the finish from the very bottom, it is most likely that some subtle unwanted drips would eventually appear down there. The final coat of microcement is already on the walls. We waited 5 hours, the microcement has dried, so now we're going to start sanding. We're sanding with 120 grit sandpaper. Because I taped the wall joints earlier, we now have a clean, perfect line here. All it needs is a light sanding with sandpaper. There's no need to put in much effort. The joint already looks very neat and aesthetic. Now we're moving on to applying FestPrimer, the primer before the sealer. We finished sanding the walls, vacuumed the surface and masked off the ceiling. At this point, there are only 2 steps left in the entire project: applying the primer and then the sealer. Before applying it, make sure to mix it thoroughly. The roller is now ready to use. We've removed all the loose fibers from it. It's time to apply the primer under the sealer. We pour it into the tray and apply it. We have a mask with gas filters and protective clothing for sealing. So as you can probably guess, we're moving on to the final stage, applying the sealer. For this step, I'm using a very strong sealer, PU Fest Turbo, which is highly resistant to different types of dirt and stains. I also have an additive for the sealer, Nano Silver Plus SB. We use it in shower areas, on countertops, and on kitchen backsplashes. It helps prevent the growth of bacteria and fungi in these areas. We're moving on to mixing the components. Here I have 800 grams of component A, 400 grams of component B, and 25 grams of the sealer additive, Nano Silver. I put on the mask and start mixing. Before application, I mix each component again in its original container. I open the containers. I pour the components into a bucket. I mix thoroughly for 3 minutes. I add the Nano Silver Plus additive, the whole bottle. Here you can see that I had 800 grams of component A of the sealer, 400 grams of component B, and 25 grams of the Nano Silver Plus additive. And I mix everything thoroughly again. Remember that after mixing turbo sealer, you have 45 minutes to apply it, so it's important to work efficiently and not leave the mixed product for too long. After 24 hours from applying the first coat of PU Fest Turbo, sand the entire surface with 220 grit sandpaper. This will prepare the surface properly and help the next coat adhere well. Once the sanding is done, remove the dust and move on to applying the second coat of PU Fest Turbo Sealer. Remember to add Nano Silver Plus to the second coat as well. We did it! He bathroom is now ready. Thank you for being with us. See you in the next videos. Remember to leave a thumbs up and subscribe. Bye!